Since the Dragonflight pre-patch was just released, that means ShadowLands is officially over. So what better time to give a final review on the ShadowLands experience? I'm a WoW noob who just came back after a 10-year hiatus, but I think a majority of people are going to agree with what I have to say. If you don't agree, feel free to leave your own opinion down in the comments below. I'll read them, but you're probably not going to change my mind. So let's talk about ShadowLands questing. Typically what you would expect while playing World of Warcraft. Kill this many mob, collect this many item, but there was a few unique quests types in there to help keep it fresh. Reading all the quest text does get tedious over time, but there were quite a few cutscenes to help break that monotony up. The quest pacing was also actually really well done, as about the time I started to feel bored of being in the same zone, the questing would then take me to the next new zone, which pretty much made me feel refreshed and ready to just jump into the next set of quests. Oh, and speaking of cutscenes, there was a lot of cutscenes, like I wasn't expecting it, and it was a very welcomed experience. ShadowLands really hooked me into the story with the quests and cutscenes. But now let's talk about the leveling. Getting the ShadowLands expansion gave me a free boost to level 50, meaning I only had to grind 10 levels in order to hit that max peak. However, leveling from 50 to 60 felt like a complete waste and unnecessary. You would imagine that leveling your character 10 levels would grant you some type of substantial power boost or at least some type of difference, and I felt nothing. My character felt the same at level 60 as it did in level 50, aside from a different number. And that's probably mostly due to the horrible talent tree and the progression of your abilities, which is supposed to be fixed in Dragonflight. Oh, and a final note for leveling, this is more of like a convenience thing. Why do we still have to complete over 400 quests before we're allowed to fly in a new zone? They need to stop gating this behind stuff and just allow us to fly, because it's such a convenience and a time factor. So now let's talk about the zones. Blizzard has always had a beautiful art style, and every zone has their own unique theme to help them stand apart. Not to mention the music is always amazing and it fits every zone. So the mall. This was a very cool place at first, but once the main quest started taking me back to the mall over and over again, I quickly developed a very strong hate for that zone. Literally, it almost made me stop playing a few times. Oribos. This is the main city. I would compare it to like a futuristic Dalaran. It's a giant circle, very easy to navigate, and nothing is too far apart. Bastion. This is an angelic zone and home of the Kyrian Covenant. Maldraxxus. Basically Naxxramas 2.0, and home of the Necro Lords Covenant. Ardenweald. Hands down the most beautiful zone of the expansion, and this is home to the Night Fae Covenant. Revendreth. This was my favorite zone and also the covenant that I chose, the Venthyr. So now let's talk about those covenants. I thought it was a pretty cool concept. It's taking reputation grinding to the next level. Each covenant has their own style and special cosmetics, so you get to pick the one that you want your character to look like. The only downside to that is that each covenant having their own abilities means that for certain classes, in order to, perform to the best peak ability, you have to take a certain covenant. And I think that's probably the only downside to that. I also like getting the covenant companions and being able to send them out on their own little quests. The covenants also have buildings and other features that you can develop as you grind through reputation. And overall, these systems just kind of make you feel more entwined with the covenant and actually a part of that group. I do, however, have mixed feelings on the soul binding and the conduits. I wanted to like it, but I felt like it was just a time sink and something to help dilute the item pool. Okay, so now let's talk about Torghast. Now, I haven't completed Torghast. I did progress through quite a few levels, and I'm sure that some people here are going to disagree as I think that Torghast has a very negative reputation. From my own experience, the solo content was actually a really nice change up. Progressing through levels, obtaining new abilities, and making your character stronger is definitely really appealing and pretty fun. I can understand that it feels really grindy with the amount of floors that are there, and each floor does take a little bit of time, but this isn't something you should probably sit down and just do straight on. It's something that is there to break up the monotony of everything else or during some downtime. And because of that, I actually enjoyed it, and I think it's a really great addition to the game. All right, so now let's start getting into the good stuff. Let's talk about the dungeons. I had a lot of fun with the dungeons. None of them were challenging or difficult, and even on the heroic level, there was only a few times that you would occasionally have a wipe. I went into every single dungeon completely blind, only relying on the adventure tome, and I had a pretty good understanding of what I was doing and of what to expect with the bosses. Something I wasn't used to is actually having to do mechanics inside of dungeons. The last time I played WoW, there really wasn't any mechanics when you ran 5-mans, and that was a really welcome change. I also didn't get to try Mythic Plus. However, the idea behind the leaderboards, the additional challenges, and then the extra items makes it really appealing and a really great way to keep bringing people back. Overall, I had a blast playing the dungeons. All right, so now let's jump into the raids. Due to time, I only got to do LFR, but I promise I'll be reasonable, and I think most people will still agree. Jumping into raids brought back some crazy good feelings. Every single raid looked amazing, and the environment was just top-notch. I will say that trash felt completely pointless. In my opinion, trash mobs should have certain abilities that help prepare you for the upcoming raid boss. And at least in LFR, I apologize if it's not like this in the normal heroic or mythic, but it was just an AoE Zerk fest. I went into every single raid fight without looking anything up and only going by what the adventure tome showed. And I know everybody jokes about LFR being, the players being AFK, but you still have to understand some of the mechanics in order to not die. I can say that there was only a few bosses that I actually died on, and that was more so just HP limitations because I was all in fresh, really low, crappy gear. But the basics all still apply the same. Don't stand in the red and avoid these lines. However, I will say that the amount of mechanics inside of ShadowLands raiding is so much more than what I was used to back playing Wrath. So the raiding is absolutely insane, and I know that on the higher levels, it's even more insane. I did watch Asmonball do Sylvanas on Mythic, and the amount of knowledge that you have to have is literally insane. Raid leaders make or break. However, with Dragonflight, I am much more serious now, and I will have much more time, so I will be jumping into normal heroic and mythic raiding, and not just doing LFR. So let's talk about those dungeon and raid difficulties. Dungeons have a normal mode, a heroic mode, and a mythic plus mode. Raids have LFR, they have normal, they have heroic, and they have mythic. Honestly, I think that's way too many difficulties. The dungeons are fine, but I don't understand why they call it mythic plus and not just heroic plus. And for raiding, they should just combine LFR with normal mode, then have heroic and mythic levels. LFR is phenomenal for casual players, and for those like me who like to just jump into a raid without having to look a whole bunch of shit up and just progress by my own trial and error. Then you take that knowledge that you learn from the very easy raid over into the more complex and, master it. And I'll finish the dungeons and raids by talking about the loot. The personal loot system. I'm really unsure of how I feel about it. I actually had to get somebody to explain what was going on when I was running dungeons in LFR because I didn't know why I wasn't seeing any loot pop up, like to roll. I understand why it's being done in order to help prevent like ninja looting and to make sure people are getting the gear that they actually need, but they should have some type of window that like pops up for gear that can be used with multiple classes, and then it shows like an animation of like dice rolling, or to actually see that, hey, this item dropped, you were considered, you just didn't win it, as opposed to being a completely hidden system that you just click the button and it's thrown into someone's inventory. PvP. So there's not a whole lot that I can contribute here because I did not partake. I've never been a huge PvPer. I do enjoy the battlegrounds and world PvP, at least back in the old days. However, with the numerous amount of classes and racial abilities and covenant abilities and conduits and PvP only abilities, there was no way that in my short playtime I could jump into PvP and be the least bit competitive without doing hours of research. So the entry into PvP is absolutely ridiculous. All right, let's talk about the interface. The WoW interface literally looked the exact same from the last time that I played it back in Wrath. Add-ons were still completely necessary. Although I will say that the Adventure Tome is a really, really nice and welcomed addition. Being able to research the dungeons and raid bosses in the game is just huge. The quest tracker was also really well done. I do wish that you could disable certain spell effects for other players that are in your party and or raid, because sometimes it can be really difficult to tell what's going on, especially if you're somebody who plays with all of the graphics cranked up. Honestly, if they adopted something like what Lost Ark does, that would be perfect. All right, so let's go over my final thoughts here. ShadowLands seems to offer a never-ending fountain of content to partake in. And it also seems like they're doing a terrific job of making the game accessible to all types of MMO players. Whether you're a lone wolf, a quester, gatherer, or a raider. The big positives: questing, the game atmosphere, and raiding. The big negatives: the same crappy interface that they've had forever, the limited amount of talents, professions being the same thing with no innovation, and the forced covenant path. Overall, WoW still feels like WoW, and I'm beyond happy that I jumped back into it when I did. I will be purchasing Dragonflight, I will be joining a guild, and partaking in all of the raiding difficulties. And I will also be creating more WoW content. With all that being said, since you've watched this far, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up, as it truly helps out my channel. And if you want a hunter or a DK tank for your guild, hit me up. I'm on Staghelm for the Horde.